Hello everyone. Let's start with a quick recap of buttons and bookmarks before we go into the fancy applications. What elements do we have in this report? I see we have a filter, a table, and a column chart. But there might be more elements that we cannot see. Let's check out the list of all elements in the selection pane, which you can access via the View tab. Ooh, what's this? We have a hidden element that is not appearing anywhere on the board. You can unhide it by clicking on the eye icon. And this way you use hiding visuals, you can make sure your user only sees what they need to at that moment. For now, let's keep this visual hidden. Imagine this is the default state of the report, and we regularly want to come back to it. Let's save it as a bookmark. I will click it on the View tab and check the Bookmarks pane. We don't have any bookmarks yet, as you can see. So I'm going to add one called Default. And now when I click on make a selection in the data and I click on the bookmark, then I'm brought back to how it used to look. Let's say that we only want to show part of the data in a bookmark. For example, you find a really interesting data point with a particular filter selection and you want to access it later. I will filter for the first three numbers and I will add a bookmark called ABC. If we ever want to go back to the default, we can just select its bookmark. Let's say we not only want to filter the data, but we also want to display it in a certain way. For example, you decide that an area chart is the only way to properly emphasize the trend when you select the combination of ACE. What you can do is make the area chart visual visible and hide the column chart. And now we can save this as a bookmark. So we'll call that ACE area. And we can call the previous one ABC column. And now it's easy to go from the default to the column chart combination and the ACE area chart combination. Our users might not be familiar with how we access bookmarks, but they all know how to click a button. So let's make accessing bookmarks easy for them. I will get them some buttons from the Home tab and from the Buttons drop-down. Let's make that button nice and big. And copy it a few times to give us a bookmark for every button for every bookmark. And let's give all of them some text of size 20. We can have the first one be the default bookmark. Next one is the ABC column. And the next one is ACE area. Now when we've added the buttons, right now they're not doing anything. What we need to go is into the action drop down, and then we'll click the first one to go into the default bookmark, and so on. Now all the user has to do is to click on each of them to change what's displayed. And you'll see every time I click on a button, then the selected bookmark also changes. You can also see that every time I add an element to the canvas, then it shows up in the selection pane. We have now one of these buttons for each of the ones we've added. You'll see that they all have the same name, which makes it a bit hard once you have a lot of elements on screen to do anything to be organized about it. So let's give them descriptive names. This one's the default button. This one's the ABC column. And finally, we've got the area one. And with all of these, you know that titles are a bit ugly, so we don't want to show those to the users. So let's just keep the titles hidden so they're only visible to the developer. And now that we've changed the titles of the buttons, then the users know what they're referring to. Congratulations! The report you gave was a success. Everyone's impressed. Now your boss comes to you and says, actually, both the column chart and the area chart can be useful for the same data. She wants to be able to flip between the two charts without affecting the data. For example, she wants the charts to be superimposed on each other. And she wants to be able to make a selection such as ACD. And this one's showing certain values. And she wants to quickly jump into the area chart to show the same thing. But right now, if she tries to use the bookmarks, then they change the data for her. So she needs to manually change that. So this is happening because the bookmarks are saving both the data and the display of the data. Check this out. When you go into the bookmarks ellipses, you have the checked option of data and of display. What we want is to only affect the display. So let's add a new bookmark. This one will be called column because we just want to change to a column visual, and we'll deselect the data option. Then we'll add a similar one for the area chart. And now you'll see that if I make a selection of that we haven't used before, then I can click onto the bookmarks. There we go. And keep the selection, but just change the visuals. So to make it a bit easier for her, we can add bookmarks specifically for this. So let's change this text to be area. And the action will be to change to the area chart. And we'll add a similar one for the column. Let's also change the icons to make it obvious that these do something different. Which one's the best one? Yeah, that'll do. So now the users can easily flip between them. But to make it extra easy for the users to understand what they do, we can add hover text. So you'll see by default, we have text shown when nothing's happening to the button. When the user hovers, we can say that columns are good for data points. And when you hover over it, then it'll display the text, sometimes overlapping. And what's the area chart good for? Well, it's good for trends. So that's why we would use only this display option. But we have another option where we uncheck display and only show the data. Now, does anyone have any idea why that would be useful? Let's say you're analyzing your data and you have a bunch of visuals and a bunch of filters. You want to get rid of all the filters, but keep the visuals that you've currently got selected. Right now, if you click on our default option, then that's going to reset everything, the data and the display. What we want is to modify it to just reset the data and leave the display as it is. So now when I jump to the filtered column chart and I click on default, then it just resets the data. And when I jump to the area chart and the default, then it retains the area chart while only affecting the data. Let's make this obvious to the users by changing that name to reset data. Let's also change the button text. And let's change the icon to something more visually descriptive. Awesome. So that's the basics of buttons and bookmarks. Before we move on to any real-life examples, does anyone have questions? Awesome. If you're interested in trying out what I've shown, you can find this basic report uploaded to our user group website.